Welcome to Blue Iron IP's Patent Myth podcast. I'm Russ Krajak, your host, and the author of Investing in Patents, as well as a soon-to-be-released book called Startup IP Strategy. Blue Iron provides financing for patents, so we look at startup companies and their assets, the patent assets, as having value and trying to figure out how do we create value with those assets. Our view is that 95% of all the patents out there are worthless, and the percentage might even be higher for startup companies. Our aim is to take down some of those existing patent myths and put in better practices so that startups could do a much better job with their IP. One of the big myths out there is that we should put every single thing we know into a patent application. And I look at that in a little bit more detail here. That advice is 20 years old. And in fact, the way the laws are now, every word in the patent application hurts you. One of the myths that is very widely propagated is that we should put everything we know into a patent application. When we file the patent application, we should put extra features in or ideas that we might put in our product or something like that. That used to be best practice. But 20 years ago, there was a sea change in the patent laws, and that idea of putting as much stuff in the patent application is no longer the best practice. In fact, it tends to be pretty damaging, especially in the startup scenario. And that sea change in the patent laws happened right around 1999. And there were two features that changed. One was that patent applications must be published, and the second must be published at 18 months. And the second feature is that the patent term can be no longer than 20 years from the earliest filing date. And both of these changes were, driven by the PCT, the Patent Cooperation Treaty, which we'll talk about that in just a minute. Before 1999, there was an inventor who actually caused all these changes. It was one single inventor, and his name was Jerome Lemelson. And he was monumentally successful in using the patent system effectively and developing new technology that was readily applicable, and he literally made hundreds of millions of dollars licensing his technology. He's widely known in the patent circles, and that's why this notion of put everything in the patent application is still talked about as best advice. But lo and behold, that was 20 years ago. In his day, Mr. Lemelson he started out as an engineer at a mine, where one of these deep hole mines where they have a railroad that goes, set of railroad tracks that goes deep into the ground, and miners would fill up those ore cars with ore, and they bring them to the surface. Now, some of the ore was like tailings and just needed to be dumped. Some of it was, a high quality ore that was going to be refined. And the problem they had was that they'd pull all these cars out, and at the surface, they needed to be shunted into different tracks. One track for just dump the stuff out, others for further refinement. And sometimes they had different qualities of ores, or, the ore contained different minerals or whatever. So, that the cars had to be segregated when they hit the surface. So what Mr. Lemelson did is he created a mechanism for putting lines on the side of the cars. And he put lines in different patterns. And when when the cars got to the surface, they would detect what the patterns were, and they'd switch the cars into different segments of the railroad for further processing. Well, those lines on the side of the cars evolved over 20 or 30 or 40 years into the barcodes for all the products at the grocery store, for example. All those scanners that scan the UPC codes, all that is from, originated with Jerome Lemelson back in the 50s at a mine. Well, Lemelson and his patent attorney took really good advantage of the patent system. And they would file a patent application, and then they'd find an improvement, and they'd file a continuation application called a continuation in part, which still exists today. And then they do it again and again and again and again. And they were able to keep this string of patents alive for decades, literally 20, 30, 40 years of priority history on some of his patents. And, before 1999, the patent application or the patent applicant would be able to argue with the patent examiner, figure out what those claims are going to be, and do it all in secret because the patent applications were not published. So we never got to see what other people had pending. The only thing we know was on their product it say patent pending. So we don't know what that's going to be until the patent actually issues. And it might pop up and be really devastating, or it might pop up and it might be weak. Who knows? We don't know. All we know is we had something pending. And Mr. Lemelson would write these continuations, and they would pop up. And he was known as the king of the submarine patent because they'd pop up out of nowhere and kill you. So that was part of the reason why patents needed to be published, or I shouldn't say needed, but why Congress changed it so that patents were published. And beforehand, we could file a patent application, see what those claims are going to be, and then make a decision whether or not we wanted to give up our trade secrets. Trade secrets are great, okay? Trade secrets are, what Coca-Cola, the formula for Coke, is one of the most famous trade secrets. They could have got a patent, but they would have had to disclose it. And for their business model, it makes perfect sense. Keep it a trade secret. Never let it see the light of day. Back in Lemelson's day, I could keep things as a trade secret through my patent application. I could get the feedback from the examiner. The examiner would say, okay, this is what I'm going to give you. And you can say, that's not good enough. That's not a good bargain. I'm going to abandon the patent application. Or, you get rejected over and over and over, and, you don't feel any comfortable narrowing the claims anymore. So you could abandon it and never have to give up your trade secret. So back in the day, it really, you never got hurt by putting everything in your patent application, all these great ideas. In fact, because of this continuation thing that Lemelson was doing, it was great. You could put all this stuff in the patent application and mine it for decades, okay, if you wanted to pay your patent attorney that much. But that was a perfectly acceptable and best practice at the time. And in fact, if I was doing a startup and I could think through every direction that this technology might grow or flourish, or, why not put it all down and hopefully write it well enough that it'll support claims later and all that. Today, the calculus is completely different. Okay. Today, the calculus is I have to give away this trade secret. If I'm even going to apply for a patent application, I have to give away this trade secret. And maybe I'll get a claim back. It could be that patent's never allowed. Okay. And I just told my competitors, this is exactly what I was thinking. This is exactly where I see the technology going. This is exactly how I was going to do it. This is exactly what, my product roadmap is. Do I want that out in the public? Probably not. Okay. And that what I'm giving away has a huge, huge, huge price. I was talking to one company. I was doing due diligence for an angel investor, and I asked the inventor, well, if I'd signed an NDA and all this stuff because he's so protective of his technology. Fine, I'll sign the NDA to have a look at it, and because I was going to give an assessment. And I asked him, well, if somebody used your exact formula, could you tell? If they had a product on the market that was made using your manufacturing process, could you tell? And he's like, oh no, it's exactly the same as this other manufacturing process. I'm like, well, that should be a trade secret. You've basically undercut your entire technology stack. You're the only, your technology, your core trade secret, you're giving that away. You're telling everybody in the world, this is how I do it. And if they do that in some manufacturing facility that you have no access to, you'll never know. So it's completely unenforceable. You just gave away the thing that you were so paranoid you made me sign an NDA to see it. And if I just wait till that patent's published, you just gave it away for free. Do you realize you did that? And he didn't understand that he was losing his rights by trying to get patent protection. And so today we don't get that opportunity to see what the claims are going to be before we commit to giving away our trade secret. One of the ways that I deal with it when I'm financing a patent, when I have my skin in the game on a patent, I will spend 5 hours researching claims for every 1 hour I spend writing the patent application. So I will spend 5 times as much time concentrating on claims. I want to write them appropriately. I want to make sure I capture a point of novelty. That point of novelty has to capture real economic value that customers are paying for. I want it to be detectable so that I know if my competitors are using it. I want those claims to be directed at a competitor too, something that they manufacture, a service they provide, whatever, so that I can enforce it against them. I want to design the claims with all that stuff in mind. And then I want to go back and search the claims because I want to know if there's prior art that's going to hurt me, that I'm going to have to design around, that I'm going to have to, argue, amend my claims with the examiner to get around. So I'm going to search and search and search. And then when I'm satisfied with the claims, I write a specification that only supports the claims and nothing more. Okay, we never add anything more to the specification. If it's not in the claims, it shouldn't be the spec. Okay, we're not about trying to add anything more to it. And I learned this lesson in a very, very difficult way. I represented a company that did battery separators. And the battery separators are this piece of foam that goes between the anode and cathode of a lithium-ion battery. And it's a high temperature thermoplastic. And we really had one of the just amazing top tier inventors. There's very few times in your career where you'll run into somebody that has that remarkable talent stack or experience stack that all kind of comes together at one time. This inventor knew thermoplastics and thermoplastic processing. He also knew battery chemistry. He also knew manufacturing. He knew battery assembly and a battery configuration and battery manufacturing. He had it all. And he had tons of experience to tell him what worked and what didn't and what other people did. And so his stuff was absolutely top notch. One of the things he did, which was unfortunate, was that he would file provisional patent applications on his own. And he would write these things and use it as a way to kind of think through his invention. Think through, okay, well, I'm thinking about how to use this set of polymers. Well, and that would mean that our machinery would have to be configured like this, and that would cause this problem. So we'd have to add this other processing step, and then we'd have to, we're using this solvent, and so I'd use another, a different solvent that wasn't miscible in that, and so on. And he would be able to just think through this thing and really lay out all the problems and a lot of the solutions with those. So one of his original patent applications, he was thinking through this, and turns out that one of the biggest a big failure mode for batteries is that the separator would collapse. And with a thermoplastic separator, once it got to a certain temperature, there would be a collapse, and the anode and cathode would touch. There'd be a huge release of energy very, very quickly, which results in a fire. And batteries have, this has been a problem for batteries for years, and a lot of them have pressure release mechanisms. They'll have temperature sensors. They'll have cooling mechanism. They'll shut down at certain temperatures. There's all kinds of mechanisms that are commonly used to deal with this temperature spike and avoid fires. And if you've ever seen the videos of Teslas when they're burning, they burn. They burn like an inferno. And that's because there's this huge amount of energy that gets dissipated in a hurry. So he's thinking about this problem. And one of the things he said in his very original patent application was, one of the things he said in that patent application was, we could put fibers in the separator. And fibers meaning like a super high temperature fiber, something that would resist, 1,000, 2,000 degrees C kind of thing. And the thought process would be that the fibers would mechanically separate the anode and cathode at least enough that the energy could be dissipated slowly. And if it's relatively slowly, it's very fast. But if it could be dissipated slowly, well, then things wouldn't catch fire. It'd get hot, but it wouldn't catch fire. Well, the point of that original patent application was his unique processing method. It was really focused on the way he created pores in the sponge layer, the separator. And that was the real point to novelty, but he happened to throw in this extra thing about fibers. Okay, well, fast forward several years. That patent was written by another attorney. It was issued by them. I come in probably 3 to 5 years after that got started. They had raised a little bit of money. I started writing some patents for them. They raised some more money. I think we probably had raised 13 to 15 million, I think, at the end of it. And we were really starting to cook on all cylinders. We had, or I should say fire on all cylinders. Don't want to mix metaphors. We were able to, we had a manufacturing plant. We had a clean room for assembling batteries. We had the ability to make batteries. And that gave us the ability to test batteries, and we were doing a whole bunch of life cycle testing, and we had the processing equipment. So we were starting to figure out that, how do we manufacture at volume and work on those kind of details so that we can start, building bigger sample lots for our customers, the battery manufacturers, to start making and testing in volume. And then eventually they'd commission a gigantic production line and we'd be off to the races. So we were getting really close. And right about then, Boeing started having problems with the 787. The 787 had just been commercial, just started selling commercial. They started using them. The airliners started using them, and they wound up having some problems with fires. And fires are, super, super bad on airplanes. But it was fires with the lithium ion batteries. They would get over temperature and they'd spontaneously combust. So the entire fleet of 787s was grounded for that problem. Well, that got us going to think about, well, our customers are going to want to deal with this fire problem. And you know what? We know how to solve it. We can solve it with fibers. So we started working on fibers. Turns out fibers were really, really hard. If they're too short, they weren't very effective. If they're too long, they turned into this mass of spaghetti. They were really difficult to mix, and so we had to apply sizing to them. Getting them to distribute in the mixture was really hard. Keeping that mixture, agitated all the time was really difficult. When we cast the material, all the fibers would fall to the bottom. We had to figure out how to deal with that. It was just one headache after the next. But we finally got it to work. And it really, really worked. We had built a few batteries that were gigantic, super thick, multiple layers, super high capacity, high voltage, high current batteries. And we'd charge them all the way up and literally drive a nail through them and short the entire thing out, over temp the whole thing, and we never experienced a fire. The separators would collapse, they'd melt, but those fibers would just hold things apart far enough that the energy would dissipate without starting a fire. So we knew we had a winner. Well, what happens? Well, of course, I file a patent application. We think, woohoo, we're on our way. And we get rejected. We get rejected by the patent examiner citing my inventor's provisional patent application from years ago. Something extra that he threw in that was never claimed was we could put fibers in there. And here we are, 5, 6, 7, it was 10 years later. We finally figured it out. It was so difficult to figure out, but we did it. We got it done. And we won a patent application, and something that really would set us apart as the premier manufacturer. You want to use this technology to avoid fires and all that stuff. Lo and behold, I get rejected because of that original patent application. My inventor's original provisional got cited against me. Well, what did we learn from this? Well, what we learned as a company, we learned the difference between Chapter 7 and Chapter 11 bankruptcy, because we ran out of money and this thing never made it there. We never got across the goal line, even though it was... And interestingly, this battery fire thing that we were solving was about 3 or 4 years ahead of that Galaxy Note 7 or Note 5 or whatever, the cell phone that would spontaneously combust because of the batteries. We had solved that years before. And interestingly enough, Samsung wound up buying all these patents at a fire sale during the bankruptcy procedure. But the thing I learned about it as a patent practitioner was that every single word in the patent application hurts you. Think about that. Every word in the patent application hurts you. Every word in that description that tells you about that, what that invention is, or some feature that, wouldn't it be cool if we had this other feature? Every one of those words hurts you in the patent application. If it's not in the claims, and if it's not supporting those claims, it should not be in the specification. And, that's how I do it when when I have skin in the game. One of the other really interesting things that happen with that patent law in 1999 is that every patent, no patent could extend past 20 years from that earlier filing date. And so in Jerome Lemelson's day, where he was able to do that for like 3 decades, well, that would have been completely hosed. In my situation with a startup, we were 10 years in, we're halfway through the patent term of that first patent that we had issued, and then I wanted to file a patent application. And really what I wanted was another 20 years of patent life after that patent term. I wanted 20 years on this fiber invention. And so even if, we didn't have those continuations going, so I could not claim priority to it. But even if I did, instead of having a patent with 20 years of life and, huge value that I could go out and license, I would have wound up with a patent that was really short, where maybe my competitors could have just waited me out or, waited to the end of the patent term before they infringed. And in any event, I would have wound up with a really watered down, unusable patent. Okay, unusable might be too strong, but a really watered down, not highly valued patent, even though it was the key that really could have made this company tick. And all because we put extra stuff in that early patent application. So anyway, this notion of put everything in a patent application, I don't think it's a very good piece of advice. The patent attorneys love it, okay? I mean, don't get me wrong. They're really going to push it because for them, it's the gift that keeps on giving. If I have a continuation application and my client's running out of money and, I'm getting a notice of allowance on that last continuation, I'm going to go and sell them really, really hard on doing a continuation and giving me even more money, even though they're really hurting. And the sales pitch is going to be, I shouldn't say I'm going to, but the patent attorney is going to sell that really, really hard. Because what if you lose it? What if you lose it? What if you lose all your rights? And that money might be better spent somewhere else. So anyway, I think that that's a topic for a whole nother podcast, I think. But anyway, those are my thoughts on why you should never, never, never put extra stuff in a patent application. And I really welcome your feedback, your reaction, your comments about this. And thanks for listening. Well, thanks for listening. I'm Russ Krajak, CEO of Blue Iron IP. We're a patent finance company where we'll make 50 to 100K investments in startup companies to get them decent patent portfolios. And then we'll do loans against patents at $2 to $5 million for later stage companies that have some revenue. You can find me at blueironip.com. You can pick up my book, Investing in Patents, available on Amazon. We're always looking for new deals to finance and syndication partners with angel or venture firms. And please feel free to get in touch with me. And I look forward to chatting with you.